You are now listening to the Vegan Stuff podcast with Caavakushi.
Hosting this podcast today are our two AI hosts, Sam and Kim. If you simply can't get enough of us, go to caavakushi.com and sign up for our vegan newsletter. And we also have some good news. We will be releasing our first ever cookbook pretty soon, so stay tuned. Hey, don't forget to follow us on our socials too.
All right, diving in today, and we're looking at veganism.
Okay.
But hang on, before you hit that skip button thinking you've heard it all,
Yeah.
we're going through the wild world of mukbang to get there.
Okay.
You know those videos where people are eating tons of food on camera?
Right. Yeah, those are interesting.
It's a whole thing.
It's more than just a spectacle.
Yeah.
Especially when we're looking at vegan mukbang.
Oh, yeah.
Which is what we are doing.
Yeah.
It adds a whole other layer, I think.
Okay.
It challenges the idea of veganism as restrictive,
Uh-huh.
and it really showcases just how abundant and delicious plant-based eating can be.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So our sources are videos from creators That Vegan Couple,
Really?
Rose and Luca, and Cheap Lazy Vegan, Rose.
Okay.
And full disclosure, they're hilarious. Their banter alone, you got to watch it.
They are a lot of fun.
Really funny. But what I thought was really interesting is how they use this whole format to explore, everything from cooking techniques to get the loneliness epidemic.
Oh,
I mean, it's kind of all over the place.
It's interesting, though, how it kind of all ties back to food, right?
It does, yeah.
I mean, it's a reminder that food is never just food.
Yeah.
It's culture, it's psychology, technology, all these things.
Totally.
And these creators, they really get that.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Yeah.
Okay, so mukbang itself,
Okay.
it's like voyeuristic almost.
Yeah.
But then also like oddly compelling.
I agree. Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever fallen into that YouTube rabbit hole.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But people love the massive portions, the like ASMR-ish sounds.
Yeah, the sounds are interesting.
The interaction, it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
But I guess what makes vegan mukbang different, though, is this emphasis on showcasing plant-based food, not as deprivation, but as its own, like, unique culinary adventure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that Vegan Couple, I think they do a really good job of this.
Yeah.
In one of their videos, Rose breaks down her whole approach to vegan cooking.
Right.
And she talks about how it's not about perfectly replicating meat-based dishes.
Okay.
Which I think a lot of people think that's what veganism is.
Right, yeah, it's just substitutions.
Yeah, the tofu chicken or whatever.
Right.
But it's not about that.
Interesting.
It's about capturing the essence.
Yes, okay.
She talks about focusing on flavor, purpose,
Okay.
which I think resonates with a lot of people who are either vegan or interested in veganism.
Yeah, for sure.
It's about finding joy and creativity within this framework.
And sometimes that joy involves like heated debates about the perfect vegan burger construction.
Oh, yeah.
Which they get into it.
Yeah, it can get intense.
But it's funny, but it also like highlights how much thought goes into vegan cooking.
Totally.
Right. It's the layering of flavors, textures.
It's an art form.
It's an art form, exactly.
Yeah.
They're not just, throwing some lettuce on a bun and calling it a day.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
There's so much that goes into it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Because that ties into, I think, a larger conversation about accessibility.
Uh-huh.
And Rose and Luca, they're actually quite vocal about the need for mainstream places like your McDonald's, your Domino's,
Right.
to offer good vegan options.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's not just about convenience for them.
Right. It's a bigger...
It goes deeper than that.
Yeah. What is that?
It's about inclusion, especially for kids.
Oh, okay.
No one wants to be that kid at the pizza party that can't eat anything.
Right. Right.
Or feels like their only option at a fast food place is a sad little side salad.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to be the odd one out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So having those options, those readily available options, speaks to a more inclusive world, I think.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the actual food for a second, because these mukbangs are visually, they're really something.
They are, yeah.
Cheap Lazy Vegan, for instance.
Yeah.
They do this awesome spread with Korean army-based stew,
Okay.
which, by the way, I had no idea even existed.
It's called Budae Jaege.
Okay, there you go.
It's fascinating, the history behind it.
Really?
Yeah, so basically, post-Korean War,
Okay.
food was scarce, right? So people started incorporating all this surplus American rations. Things like Spam, hot dogs,
Wow.
into their traditional stews.
Okay.
So it's this really interesting fusion of cultures, historical circumstances,
Wow.
all on a plate.
That's kind of amazing.
It's really cool.
And of course, Rose makes it vegan, which, if her reactions are anything to go by, it's ridiculously good.
Sounds delicious.
But it just goes to show, right? Food can be this amazing window into like history, culture, even resilience in a way.
It also challenges our preconceived notions, I think.
How so?
Well, I think people assume authentic cuisine is static,
Yeah.
but it's not.
Right.
It's constantly evolving, borrowing, adapting.
That's a good point, yeah.
So veganism, in that sense, is just another evolution of that, another lens to view these culinary traditions.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so these creators, they don't shy away from some of the deeper aspects of veganism, you know?
Yeah.
And Rose especially gets really candid about her own journey, which, by her own admission, wasn't always easy,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah.
She started as a pescatarian
Yep.
before going full vegan.
Boy.
And what I thought was really powerful was her honesty about, like, the social pressure, the awkward conversations, even questioning her own, like, deeply held beliefs.
Right. And that can be really challenging,
Yeah.
especially when you're transitioning to a lifestyle that's often seen as different
Yeah, for sure.
or unconventional.
It can be tough.
But, you know, it's a good reminder, though,
What's that?
that personal growth can be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But it's in those uncomfortable spaces that we learn the most about ourselves
Yeah.
and the world around us.
Yeah.
And, you know, we talk about why people go vegan. We instantly think of the health aspects.
Right. That's the big one.
But they break it down, Rose and Luca.
Yeah. What do they say?
They highlight the diversity of reasons.
Yeah.
So, you know, animal welfare, the environment, personal ethics, it runs the gamut.
Right. Because it is a very personal choice.
Yeah.
And they make it clear.
Yeah.
They don't offer easy answers.
Right.
Rose talks about the emotional weight, you know, of confronting factory farming.
Right.
And then Luca, on the other hand, emphasizes finding an approach to activism that's sustainable for you.
Okay.
Like what works for you.
Yeah.
It's not about fitting into a box, you know.
Right.
It's about aligning your actions with your values.
Totally. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Did you know we have a vegan search engine, a vegan forum, a vegan newsletter, and so much more coming soon? So why not check us out at Caavakushi.com.
You know, it's interesting how they highlight that veganism is as much a personal journey as it is this like collective movement.
Yeah, for sure.
And like any journey.
There are bound to be challenges, awkward moments, maybe even a few internal debates along the way, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
And speaking of internal debates,
Okay.
Rose had this really insightful and kind of funny observation
Okay.
about the whole animal liberation concept,
Right.
which that's like next level veganism in a way.
It is. Yeah. It goes beyond just the dietary choices.
Right, exactly. It's
Yeah.
about actively advocating for like a world where animals aren't seen as commodities.
Right. So it's a much bigger, it's almost like a philosophical.
It is, it's a whole philosophy.
Yeah.
And she even connects it to like other social justice movements, which I thought was really interesting.
Okay. How so?
She's basically saying that systems of oppression are all interconnected.
Okay.
So to dismantle one, you kind of have to dismantle them all.
So it's like a much bigger picture thing.
It is. It's a really big picture idea.
Wow.
Yeah, it makes you think.
It does.
And it's not just theoretical for her. She actually shares a story about how she dealt with like the social side of being vegan.
Right.
Early on, especially.
Yeah, because that's tough.
It can be.
You're the one at the dinner party with the diet or,
Yeah.
you know, having to explain your choices
Yeah.
to well-meaning but maybe not so understanding relatives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she talks about how those situations, as awkward as they can be,
Oh, I'm sure.
actually helped her like solidify her own convictions. It's like she had to, you know, to navigate those situations, she built up her vegan muscles, so to speak.
I like that. Yeah, like it's a skill.
It is a skill.
You build it up over time.
You do.
Right.
And it's a good reminder
Yeah.
that, you know, often we grow the most outside of our comfort zones. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of comfort zones,
Okay.
Rose, who is originally from Canada,
Right.
gets surprisingly like real about life there.
Oh, is that right?
She doesn't sugarcoat it at all.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What'd she say?
She actually uses the word boring a few times.
Oh, wow. Really?
Which I thought was fascinating, especially given her later points about like the loneliness epidemic and things like that. And I'm like, is there a connection there?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah, like lack of excitement in your surroundings leading to a feeling of like social isolation.
It makes you wonder, right?
Yeah.
About the importance of like our environment and how it impacts
Right, yeah.
our sense of connection, especially in the digital age.
Yeah, because we're so connected, but also so disconnected.
Exactly. It's this weird paradox.
Totally.
And I think she's speaking to that need for like a more nuanced understanding of what loneliness even is.
What do you mean?
Well, it's not just about being physically alone.
Right.
It's about feeling unseen, unheard, like you don't belong.
Oh, okay.
And that can happen anywhere,
That's a good point.
even in a place as seemingly idyllic as Canada.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And she doesn't just stop at boring. She actually compares the Canadian mosaic model of multiculturalism, which I'd never really thought about,
Right.
to the American melting pot idea. Have you ever heard that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I thought that was really insightful.
It's a distinction that comes up a lot, when you talk about national identity.
Right.
The melting pot suggesting everyone assimilates, right?
Right, into like the dominant culture.
Exactly. Whereas the mosaic is more about preserving those distinct cultural identities
Interesting.
within a larger whole. So it's like, what does it mean to be Canadian? Or what does it mean to be American?
Right, and it sounds like, at least from what she was saying, she appreciated the Canadian emphasis on embracing diversity,
Right.
but also pointed out that it could lead to a lack of like a cohesive national identity.
Which, again,
But-
makes you think, right?
It does, yeah.
About what it means to belong to a place, to a community.
It's a really interesting thought. And it's interesting, too, how she brings food into that whole conversation.
Well, food and culture are so intertwined.
Yeah, they are.
She even mentions how there's no distinct Canadian cuisine, which I thought was interesting.
Beyond poutine, she says.
Right, exactly.
Which further emphasizes this idea of like this fragmented national identity, maybe?
Possibly. Yeah,
Because food can be such a source of connection.
totally.
You know, like sharing a meal.
It's our experience, yeah.
So the lack of a strong culinary tradition, could be seen as like reflecting that broader lack of a unified, maybe national identity.
It's an interesting lens to look at it through.
It is. It is.
For sure.
But then she takes this whole conversation in a completely different direction
Okay.
and jumps into her concerns about the loneliness epidemic
Okay.
and the role of technology, which I was like, whoa.
Like whiplash almost.
It is a little bit, but it's also really fascinating.
It is, because it's all connected, right?
It is. It is.
Because-
It all comes back to that.
She doesn't demonize technology, which
Yeah.
I appreciate.
Right.
She uses this really brilliant analogy,
Okay.
comparing social media to Tom Hanks' volleyball companion, Wilson, in Castaway.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Have you seen that movie?
Yes. And if you remember, he develops this whole relationship
I know, with this volleyball.
with his
He
volleyball.
names it Wilson.
He does. He talks to it.
He's so lonely.
Like it's his friend.
Yeah, and it's this really, I don't know, poignant commentary on
It is.
loneliness and connection.
Yeah. And she uses that, I guess, to illustrate how social media, while it provides this sense of connection,
Right.
it can never really replace like genuine human interaction.
It's like that volleyball, right?
Right.
It's a temporary companion.
Right.
It can offer comfort, but it can't fulfill our deeper needs.
Then it's heartbreaking when he loses it.
It is. It is.
But it's also this moment of like he needs more
He needs more.
than this like superficial connection.
Exactly.
And it's so easy to do that, I think, in today's world.
It is. It's very easy.
It's like we're all clinging to our own little digital Wilsons,
Right. Just substituting those like deeper interactions
Yeah.
for these fleeting little online connections.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And it makes me think about what she said about building up those social muscles, which I love that phrase.
That's such a good point.
It is, because like any muscle, right, they
Yeah.
need to be exercised.
They do.
But how do you do that when like everything is geared towards
Right. Making it easy to avoid people.
exactly
True.
all those like potentially awkward interactions?
It's so true.
But she's filming it as this like crucial skill
It is.
to combat loneliness
Totally.
and to build real connection, which is something I think we're all craving, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I like how she frames it too, because it's not about like being this effortlessly charming, social butterfly person.
Right. It's not about being perfect.
Yeah.
It's about the effort, putting in the work
Yeah, exactly.
to connect.
And she models that authenticity so well, I think, through all of this.
Yeah, she does.
Especially when you think back to when she's talking about like her transition to veganism, right? Starting as a pescatarian.
Right.
It wasn't just like this overnight thing.
Right. It was a process.
It was a process
Yeah.
of like questioning, learning, and then ultimately, you know, aligning her actions with her values.
And it's interesting how much emphasis she puts on fish.
I know, right?
Because for a lot of people, that's the line.
It is, yeah.
I can give up meat, but fish.
But fish are different.
Right. Exactly.
And she even talks about how she had to like confront that within herself.
She had to unpack that?
Because it's like, well, why?
Yeah, why?
You know?
Why is that the line?
Why is that the line? Exactly.
Yeah.
And she realizes, you know, it doesn't hold up, these arbitrary lines we draw.
Right. Because caring about animals should mean caring about all animals.
Right.
Right. Exactly. Not just the cute ones.
Exactly. Not just the ones that are easy to care about. Not just the ones we don't eat, right?
Right. Exactly.
It's easy to, you know, care about animals in the abstract.
Right. Until you're faced with the reality.
Right. Until it impacts you personally.
Yeah, exactly.
And that ties back to her point about, you know, animal liberation being this much bigger idea.
Right. It's not just about reducing harm. It's about changing the system.
Yeah. And that requires action, which, you know, her and Luca,
They definitely advocate for action.
their whole, we're not here to rock the boat, we're here to sink the boat.
It's a bold statement,
It is a bold statement.
but it gets your attention.
It does.
And it speaks to, like, I don't know, maybe there's this growing sentiment in veganism that, like, incremental change isn't enough anymore.
Right, right. That the time for being polite is over, so to speak.
Yeah, and maybe that's a little bit of that Canadian politeness coming out too, right?
Yeah, maybe so.
Like, they're ready to shake things up a bit,
Exactly.
which is exciting.
It is exciting, and it starts with us, right? Examining our own choices. Having those uncomfortable conversations. Maybe trying that vegan burger they debated for so long.
It's like bude jjigae.
Yes.
Right.
Expand those horizons.
Exactly. Be open to new possibilities.
Be open to new possibilities.
Yeah, challenge your assumptions.
And just find ways to, like, align those actions with the values, right?
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together,
We are.
navigating these big, complex issues.
Right. Trying to make a better world, right?
Yeah, exactly. And maybe have some delicious food along the way.
And you know what? Sometimes those conversations can happen in the most unexpected places.
Yeah, like while watching a vegan mukbang on YouTube.
Exactly. Big thanks to that vegan couple and cheap, lazy vegan for giving us so much to think about, and to you for listening.
Yeah, thanks for diving in with us.
Keep those conversations going, because that's where the real growth happens, right?
Absolutely.
Until next time, happy diving.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. We hope you liked this episode. If you did, we'd really appreciate it if you could give us 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. Also, we would be so appreciative if you could just share this episode or this podcast with all your friends and family who are vegans or vegan friendly. We're also really excited because we are going to be launching something really cool pretty soon on the site, so keep an eye out for that. And we will see you really soon with a new episode.